When I came back, my heart dropped. I still remember that evening like it happened yesterday. The air felt heavy, and for some reason, I couldn't shake off the strange feeling that followed me the entire way home. It was one of those moments when your gut tells you something is off, but you can't explain why. I tried brushing it aside, convincing myself I was just overthinking after a long day. But deep down, something told me that what I was about to walk into would change the way I looked at everything. As I turned the corner and finally reached the place I called home, my pace slowed. From the outside, everything looked the same, quiet, calm, almost too calm. I gripped the handle of the door, my heart already racing faster than it should have. It's strange how your body knows things before your mind does. My hands trembled a little, but I told myself not to be ridiculous. Still, I pushed the door open carefully, almost like I was afraid of what might be waiting for me inside. The first step into that room made me stop cold. My heart dropped instantly, and in that single second, I felt a wave of emotions crash over me. Fear, confusion, and disbelief all at once. I couldn't move. I couldn't even speak. Had someone been here? Did something happen while I was gone? I kept glancing around, searching for answers, but all I found was the same unsettling emptiness staring back at me. The strangest part was how ordinary everything looked at first glance. The furniture was in place. The lights were off just like I had left them. Yet something was undeniably wrong. It's hard to explain, but when you know a space so well, even the smallest changes feel enormous. That's exactly what I felt, like someone had been here, like the room had been touched, moved, disturbed. My heart refused to settle down. As I took a step inside, memories of the past few weeks started coming back to me. Life had been hectic, and I hadn't been paying close attention to little details. I'd been rushing between work, errands, and long nights away, never imagining that something could be happening right under my nose. Looking back now, I realized there had been signs, subtle things I brushed aside. A misplaced item. A sound in the night I thought was nothing. Even a feeling that I wasn't truly alone when I should have been. I told myself I was imagining things, but standing there in that moment, it all added up. There was no way this was just in my head. I could almost feel someone's presence lingering in the space, like an invisible shadow refusing to leave. Every corner I looked at only deepened my unease. I wanted to call someone, to reach out, but something stopped me. Maybe it was fear of sounding crazy, or maybe it was the quiet pull of curiosity, dragging me deeper into the mystery. I had to know what was happening, no matter how much my instincts screamed at me to turn back. Each step I took into the room felt heavier, as though the ground itself wanted to hold me back. My thoughts were spiraling, and yet, a strange calm settled over me too, like I was being led to discover something I wasn't supposed to. I didn't know it then, but this was only the beginning. The truth was far bigger, far darker than I could have imagined, and I was walking straight into it. The more I looked around, the more unsettled I became. On the surface, nothing seemed broken or stolen, but it was the subtle details that caught my attention. A photo frame on the shelf was slightly tilted, even though I knew I had straightened it days ago. A chair was pulled back from the table just enough to make me wonder if someone had been sitting there. Even the faint smell in the air, different from the usual scent of home, made me feel like I had just missed whoever had been here. It wasn't just about what I saw. It was about what I felt. And deep down, I knew this wasn't just paranoia. As I stood there, my mind kept replaying moments from the past few weeks, trying to connect the dots. I remembered the neighbor casually asking if I'd had guests lately, which struck me as odd at the time. I remembered hearing faint noises at night, the kind I dismissed as the house settling. And there was that one evening when I came back to find the door locked, but the key slid in strangely, as if someone else had used it before me. All these little things suddenly felt like pieces of a puzzle I hadn't noticed until now. Part of me wanted to believe there was a simple explanation. Maybe I was too tired, maybe I was misremembering. But another part of me couldn't ignore the possibility that someone had been in my home when I wasn't there. That thought alone sent a chill down my spine. Who could it be? And why? The questions spun in circles, but the silence of the room offered no answers. I began to wonder if this was bigger than just me. Could it be someone close to me, someone I trusted? The thought made my stomach twist. The idea that the person behind this could be someone who knew me well enough to move things without being obvious, to slip in and out without leaving clear evidence, was almost worse than imagining a stranger. Every detail, every memory, every unsettling sign pushed me further into doubt. I realized I couldn't trust what I thought I knew. And as I stood there, staring into the quiet room, I felt like the walls themselves were keeping a secret from me, one I wasn't sure I wanted to uncover, but knew I couldn't avoid. The real conflict was no longer outside. It was inside, and it had only just begun. I tried to steady my breathing, but every second in that room made my chest tighten. The more I searched, the more it felt like the house itself was alive, holding on to secrets it didn't want me to find. I ran my fingers across the surface of the table, almost expecting to feel something left behind. My eyes scanned every corner, every shadow, hoping for a clue but dreading what I might discover. It was the kind of tension that made even the smallest sound feel deafening. I decided to check the hallway. The floorboards creaked under my steps, and for a moment I froze, listening. It was so quiet that I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen, yet there was something else beneath it, something I couldn't place, like the soft echo of movement that wasn't mine. I gripped the wall for support, telling myself it was all in my head, but I knew better. Walking into the living room, I noticed something that made my stomach drop again. The curtains were slightly open. I never left them like that. From the gap, I could see the dim light of the street outside, shadows shifting as cars passed. But what unsettled me most was the thought that someone might have been standing there, watching, waiting. The idea of eyes on me while I was gone, or worse, while I was here, made my skin crawl. Every instinct told me to leave, to walk out and never look back, but I couldn't. Curiosity mixed with fear, and together they pulled me deeper into the mystery. I went into the kitchen, scanning the counters. A glass I hadn't used in days was sitting by the sink, faintly smudged as if it had been handled. That detail alone nearly set me running, but I forced myself to stay calm. If someone had been here, they had been careful, almost too careful. Whoever it was knew how to leave just enough signs to be noticed, but not enough to be caught. As the night pressed on, the unease grew heavier. I couldn't escape the feeling that I was being toyed with, that this wasn't random at all. Whoever was behind it wanted me to notice, wanted me to question, and maybe even wanted me to lose sleep over it. And it was working. The clock on the wall ticked louder than usual, each second stretching into eternity. I sat down for a moment, trying to gather my thoughts, but then I heard it, a faint sound from upstairs. It was so soft, almost like a footstep, but it was enough to make my heart pound against my ribs. My eyes shot toward the staircase, and I felt a surge of adrenaline. I stared at the shadows stretching down the hallway, waiting for movement. My mind screamed with possibilities. Was it just the house settling again, or was someone really here with me right now? I couldn't tell, and that was the worst part. The silence after that sound was unbearable, heavy and suffocating, as though the entire house was holding its breath. Every nerve in my body was on edge, and I knew this was it. I was standing on the edge of something I couldn't turn away from. Whatever was happening, whatever had been building up all this time, was reaching its breaking point. And I was about to find out whether I was ready for it or not. I stood at the bottom of the staircase, staring into the darkness above, my heart hammering so loud it drowned out every other sound. The silence was unbearable, and I knew I couldn't just stay frozen there. I took a cautious step forward, the old wood groaning under my weight. Each movement felt like I was announcing myself to whoever, or whatever, might be upstairs. My hand brushed the banister, slick with sweat, as I climbed higher, forcing myself to keep going even though every instinct screamed to turn back. When I reached the landing, I paused, straining my ears for the slightest noise. The hallway stretched out in front of me, lined with closed doors that now felt more like barriers than rooms. For a moment, nothing moved. But then, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed something that didn't belong. The door to the spare room, the one I rarely even entered, was cracked open just slightly. I knew I had left it shut. The sight froze me in place, but curiosity pushed me closer. I nudged the door open inch by inch, expecting the worst. The room looked ordinary, but then my eyes landed on something that made me stop breathing. On the desk by the window was a small notebook I had never seen before. Its pages were worn, the cover plain, but I could tell instantly it didn't belong to me. My hands shook as I picked it up, and when I flipped through, I felt my blood run cold. Inside were notes, pages filled with dates, times, and observations. At first, I couldn't make sense of them, but then I realized they were about me. Every entry detailed small parts of my life. When I left the house, when I came back, even the nights I couldn't sleep. Someone had been keeping track of me, studying my routines, documenting things I hadn't even noticed about myself. The handwriting was neat, deliberate, as if the writer had all the time in the world to watch me. I nearly dropped the notebook as my mind raced. This wasn't just about someone sneaking in. This was planned. Whoever it was knew me better than I wanted to admit. A stranger wouldn't care enough to write all of this down. It had to be someone who knew me, someone who had access to my life in ways I didn't even realize. The thought made my stomach twist with fear and anger. I flipped further and found something that made my skin crawl. The last entry was written that very day, at a time when I wasn't home. The words were simple but chilling. Still here. Still waiting. That one sentence made the silence of the house feel unbearable. Suddenly, it wasn't just about the noises, the misplaced objects, or the strange feelings. This was proof. I wasn't imagining it. Someone had been here, and they wanted me to know it. My grip tightened on the notebook as I backed out of the room, every sense heightened, convinced that at any second, I might come face to face with whoever had been writing those pages. The fear was overwhelming, but beneath it was another realization that shook me even more. If they had been inside my home so many times without me noticing, how many times had they been here while I was inside? The thought alone raised the stakes higher than I could have ever imagined. This wasn't just about uncovering a mystery anymore. It was about survival. And in that moment, standing alone in the dark hallway with the notebook in my hands, I knew the conflict was only just beginning. The real danger was closer than I ever dared to believe. I clutched the notebook tightly, every word inside burning in my mind. The house was silent, but it no longer felt empty. My chest tightened as I backed down the hallway, each step heavier than the last. Then it happened. Behind me, a floorboard creaked. It wasn't me. I froze, my pulse racing so fast it felt like my heart would break through my ribs. Slowly, I turned, my eyes straining in the dim light, and there, at the far end of the hallway, a shadow moved. It wasn't just a trick of the light. Someone was there. My throat went dry as the figure stepped forward, and in that instant, my worst fears were confirmed. It wasn't a stranger at all. It was someone I knew, someone who had a key to my world all along. The recognition hit me like a punch, leaving me breathless. The very person I trusted had been inside my home, watching, studying, leaving signs just subtle enough to torment me. I wanted to demand answers, to scream, but the words caught in my throat. All I could manage was a whisper. Why? The figure didn't answer right away, just stared, as if calculating. Then, with a calmness that terrified me more than anything, they said, "Because I needed you to notice. You weren't paying attention, and now you finally are." Their words sent chills down my spine. Everything, the tilted photo frame, the noises at night, the open curtain, had been intentional. It wasn't about stealing or harming. It was about control, about reminding me that I was never as safe as I thought. I realized then that the real conflict hadn't been about the house or the objects. It was about trust, and how easily it could be broken without me even realizing it. Summoning the last bit of courage, I stepped forward, clutching the notebook like a shield. I told them it was over, that I knew everything. For a moment, the tension was unbearable, like the air itself might shatter. Then, without warning, they turned and slipped into the shadows, leaving me standing alone, shaken but alive. Relief washed over me, but only for a moment. As I looked down at the notebook again, my eyes caught something I hadn't noticed before, a second handwriting on the very last page. The final words chilled me even more than what I'd just faced. You've been watching me too. And in that instant, I realized the story wasn't finished. The roles of watcher and watched had blurred, and the real truth was far more twisted than I had ever imagined. I stood frozen, staring at that final line in the notebook, my hands trembling. You've been watching me too. Those words shifted everything I thought I knew. For days I had convinced myself I was the victim, that someone had been controlling the story of my life without me realizing it. But that sentence forced me to look at things differently. Had I been so caught up in the fear, in the suspicion, that I had unknowingly been watching them back? Had I been part of the game all along without admitting it to myself? The more I thought about it, the more the pieces started to connect. The subtle feelings, the awareness of being observed, even the way I had started noticing tiny details I once ignored. It all suggested that maybe I wasn't as passive as I believed. The notebook wasn't just about me being studied. It was also about me recognizing what I chose to see and what I chose to ignore. That second handwriting was proof that there were two sides to this story, and I had to face the uncomfortable truth. I had been just as much a part of it as the one who left those notes behind. When the house finally went quiet again, I sat there for hours, reading every page carefully, letting the words sink in. I realized this wasn't about danger anymore. It was about awareness. About paying attention to the world around me, to the people I trusted, and to the instincts I had silenced for too long. In a strange way, the fear had forced me to wake up. The following days were filled with decisions. I changed the locks, checked every corner of my home, and began rebuilding a sense of safety. But more than that, I carried with me a lesson that would never leave. Sometimes the scariest truths aren't about strangers breaking in, but about how blind we can be to the things right in front of us. As I closed the notebook for the last time, I placed it on the shelf, not as a reminder of fear, but as proof of what I had survived. The story had left its mark, but it also gave me clarity. Trust can be fragile, silence can be dangerous, and paying attention can be the difference between feeling lost and finally understanding. And that, more than anything, is what stayed with me long after the night was over.